have seen recently, and both of them are 2024 films. To think both of them just came out in the last few months or so. So the two films I'm going to be talking about today: Saturday Night, Transformers 1. So if you do not want any spoilers for either Saturday Night or Transformers 1, do not watch the rest of this video. If you were curious about whether or not you should see them, I would recommend both films. Okay, we're going to go in the order in which I watched them. So, first, I would like to talk about Saturday Night. Now, this is the dramatized biopic recounting the tale of the very first episode of Saturday Night Live. We are pretty much following Lorne Michaels the entire time, save for just a few moments where we are with other characters. Now, the casting of this film was absolutely fantastic. The actor who played Lorne Michaels didn't necessarily sound like him, but I did feel like he captured his essence pretty well. And lots of former Saturday Night Live cast members have their own impressions of Lorne, so he's a pretty easy impersonation to do, but I feel like it could have subtracted from the performance here. Now, some background. I'm not like a die-hard Saturday Night Live fan, but the show does hold a bit of a special place in my heart, I would say. I think that Saturday Night Live is a distinct and important aspect of 20th to 21st century American pop culture, and some of our most beloved comedic actors got their professional start in Saturday Night Live. Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Gilda Radner, all these names, the list goes on and on and on. Tina Fey. I'm just scratching the surface here. And I've always been fascinated in the behind the scenes aspects. There was a really good book that came out quite some time ago. I think it was called Live from New York or something like that, and it was a behind the scenes look at some of the dysfunction of Saturday Night Live. And I think this film expertly captured that dysfunction. Now, from what I have read and from what I have heard, the lead up to the first episode going to air was far less chaotic than it is portrayed in this movie. According to some of the interviews I saw, pretty much all of their ducks were in a row. They knew exactly how the show was going to go. They had meticulously planned it out. So in that regard, this is not 100% historically accurate. However, it seems like it's sort of taking the overall essence of what Saturday Night Live was in its early days and compressing it into this film. And the way they portray that chaos visually on camera, very, very fast pace scenes never really take a moment to breathe, except for like one or two scenes. The John Belushi ice skating scene is the first one that comes to mind, and then Lorne and Chevy talking to the executives, and the stairwell scene as well. But the film is always at a very frenetic pace, and the framing, the lens used, you're very close, and there's all this sort of peripheral movement past the camera, people moving in and out of the background and foreground, and you really can't catch your breath for a moment, and I really loved that production choice. I also loved the addition of Milton Berle, a very infamous behind-the-scenes story. Milton Berle, when he came in to host Saturday Night Live, extremely inappropriate behind the scenes, exposing himself to cast members, basically refusing to take any directions whatsoever, to the point where he was the first ever person to be banned from ever hosting Saturday Night Live again. And I thought that J.K. Simmons perfectly captured Milton Berle's essence here. He didn't really look like Uncle Milty, of course. Mr. Television maybe wasn't as physically imposing as J.K. Simmons is in this film, but I think he captured sort of that essence and aura of Milton Berle quite well in this film. The standout actor for me in this, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name at the moment, but the guy who played Chevy Chase. There were times where it felt like I was watching a young Chevy Chase. Nowadays, obviously, Chevy Chase is much derided and hated, both in popular culture and by the cast and crew of Saturday Night Live. Now that some of his backstage antics have been publicized, due in part to that book I mentioned earlier. A favorite anecdote of mine is him and Bill Murray getting into a fist fight, and Bill Murray shouting medium talent at Chevy Chase. Because what a fantastic insult. You're not calling him untalented, because of course that would be a lie. Chevy Chase is quite comedically talented, but calling him a medium talent is perhaps even more cutting of an insult from Bill Murray. And this movie had a shockingly... Oh, actually I have to say that the actor who played Chevy Chase is the guy who played the Riddler in that terrible Gotham TV series. He was always one of the lone standouts in that series for me. It took me until almost the end of this film to recognize him. I also recognized, if you're a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, as I am, the guy playing the head writer is he's the guy who sells Mac and Dennis a timeshare. But as I was saying, this had a star-studded cast. Willem Dafoe was in this film. Brad Garrett was in this film. J.K. Simmons, as I mentioned earlier. Guys, I wasn't anticipating seeing them. I feel like I'm missing somebody as well. Also, I have to say, the way they captured Andy Kaufman was perfect. Saturday Night, for me, I give this movie a 4 out of 5. If you're not a fan of Saturday Night Live, you might not like this as much as I did, but I still think it tells a story that you don't necessarily have to be a fan to appreciate. Now, Transformers 1. I'm not really the biggest Transformers fan. I watched a bit of the cartoon growing up. The OG cartoon. And Transformers has been this weird thing for me where the aesthetics of it are all very interesting to me. The robots, the way they transform, all of that. But the cartoons, the movies, like the Michael Bay movies, I couldn't really care. The cartoons always felt way too disjointed, and there was just too many sort of different things and different timelines where I was just kind of like, I have other things. I don't need to care about this too. This movie might have made me a Transformers fan. They're talking about doing a trilogy of these. I will be lining up day one to go see the sequel to Transformers 1 in theaters. I wasn't really gonna watch this. I saw that I saw it, and I was like, and then I saw some reviews, and people were loving it, and it was getting all this praise, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll see what this is all about. This movie it was an animated movie, and I do think overall it likely was aimed at children, but there's some stuff in here where I'm kind of like, I don't know if that is 100% for kids. Some really great comedic moments, especially with Bumblebee. And if any of you are Transformers fans or know the lore, because in the Michael Bay films, Bumblebee couldn't speak. He had to use his radio and snippets of songs to communicate. But in this, obviously, he's voiced by Keegan-Michael Key, who does a really, really good job as Bumblebee. I really loved his performance. But is there something that happens where Bumblebee loses his voice? I kept waiting for that to happen here. And then at the end, when he went up to fight Megatron, I was like, oh, Megatron's gonna crush his throat or something, because they had already set that up earlier with Starscream, voiced by Steve Buscemi, by the way, where he crushed Starscream's throat and then his voice got higher pitched. So then when Bumblebee started fighting him, I was like, oh, he's gonna do that to him, but he's gonna lose his voice entirely. But that didn't actually end up happening. But if you'll let me know if you know the answer to that question, or if that was just an invention of the Michael Bay films. But this was a perfectly balanced. There's comedic moments which were really good. There were heartfelt moments which were really good. Inspiring moments in the way they told this story. It was a super, super tight execution of the story. They did it really, really well. The only real nitpick I have of this is kind of how quickly Megatron turns evil once he starts to. That's really sort of the only thing I took issue with. But I don't know if I would exchange that for an extra 15 minutes. That might have been too much extra time on this thing. It felt like a perfectly paced, perfect length film. Chris Hemsworth is your Optimus Prime in this. It was weird hearing him because he kept sounding like Chris Hemsworth, but then not sounding like Chris Hemsworth. And at the end, it kind of sounded like he was trying to do a Peter Cullen impression a little bit. The original voice of Optimus Prime, of course. But he sounded weird in this. I don't know if it was something he was doing for the film or something else. I'm not sure. And as somebody who like I said, I only watched the cartoon a little bit as a much younger child, when I was a little kid. I didn't know any of this backstory stuff about them being minors and all that, and I don't know if that's established lore from the comics or the cartoons, or if that was an invention of this film. But I really loved the way they introduced these characters, showing the backstory of Optimus and Megatron, making that even more tragic at the end, and then the inspiring, heroic Optimus at the very end. I absolutely adored this film, and animation is tough for me to really get into, especially 3D animation like this. I tend to prefer more traditional 2D pen and paper hand animation stuff, like older anime and Princess and the Frog, older Disney, that stuff. But this was really well done. I loved the world building. I loved all the characters. It'll be interesting to see though, because at the very end it kind of felt like those evil aliens were just kind of hand-waved away, because Megatron and the Decepticons are just living up on the surface now. And it's like, okay, but there's a bunch of vicious, angry aliens also up on the surface. So I assume if there is a sequel, that'll be an aspect of that. And then also, we know that Cybertron falls, and the Autobots have to go to Earth. So is that part 3? But I hope that we get all 3. I'll watch all of them. Transformers 1, I will give a 4.5 out of 5. 4.5. Really good movie. Anyway, guys, if you've seen those movies, let me know in the comments down below what you thought about them. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs